Hungry stray dog begs for food, but Pope Leo XIV appears and does something surprising. It was a cold morning in Rome, the kind of morning where warm bread fogged up bakery windows and people wrapped scarves tighter as they rushed through cobbled streets. Outside one of those bakeries on Via del Pellegrino, just across from a narrow fountain square, a dog sat alone. It wasn't barking, wasn't pacing, just sitting, back pressed against the cold wall, limbs curled beneath its thin frame, eyes fixed on the loaves inside the glass. Its ribs showed. Its breathing was shallow. A shredded green cloth was loosely tied around its side, a crude attempt at warmth or memory of care. Its fur, what was left of it, was dusty and thin. Each morning for the past 4 days it had returned to the same spot, drawn by the smell of roasting meat and sweet rolls. But no one stopped. People stepped over it, around it. At best, they gave it a glance of guilt. A few children tugged their parents' sleeves, but were hushed and hurried on. The bakery owner had placed a small water dish beside it once, but after a tourist complained, it was removed. The dog never growled, never chased. It simply waited. It didn't know for what. Across town, Pope Leo XIV was beginning his day. He had never liked extravagance. His daily robes were plain compared to his predecessors, and he preferred quiet chapels to grand halls. He rose early, prayed before dawn, and insisted on walking to morning appointments whenever possible, despite the objections of Vatican security. That morning, he canceled a scheduled car ride. "I need the air," he said simply. Dressed in his crimson cassock with a white collar, simple spectacles, and a heavy wool cloak, he stepped out into the streets with only one aide trailing quietly behind. His path was unannounced, his pace unhurried. Vendors nodded. One old woman kissed his hand. A child offered him a daisy. And still he kept walking, until he turned the corner past the bakery and saw the dog. He slowed. The aide took a step forward, uncertain, but the Pope raised a hand slightly. The street noise faded. There, in the gray light, the Pope stood still, eyes fixed on the animal. The dog blinked. It didn't react. Not yet. Just watched. People passed by, recognizing the Pope now. Some stopped, unsure what was happening. Others began taking photos. But Pope Leo XIV didn't move. He stared not with pity, but with knowing. Then, in front of tourists, clergy, and confused pedestrians, he stepped off the curb and knelt. A soft gasp rose from the crowd. Pope Leo reached into his side satchel, a cloth bag he often carried with notes, handkerchiefs, and small items. From it he pulled out a paper bundle. Inside was a roll of bread, a gift from a parish nun earlier that morning. He unwrapped it slowly and broke it into halves, then quarters. Still kneeling, he placed the pieces gently on the sidewalk in front of the dog. The stray flinched at the motion. Its paw twitched, but then it crawled forward, inch by inch, and began to eat. The Pope didn't touch it. He just waited. More people had stopped now. Whispers rippled through the air. Phones raised. Even the bakery owner stepped outside, frozen by the sight of the Pope feeding a starving stray on his doorstep. The dog finished one piece, then another. Then it looked up, really looked into the Pope's face. The Pope smiled, just barely. He reached out a weathered hand, palm up, and whispered something in Latin no one else could hear. The dog didn't understand the words, but it didn't need to. It stepped closer, rested its head just for a moment against his knee, and the Pope placed his hand gently on its back. In that instant, The world went still. No sermon, no speech, just mercy, just presence. The aide stepped forward again, this time with a blanket taken from the Pope's vehicle, always carried for the sick or homeless. Pope Leo nodded once. The blanket was placed carefully over the dog. The bakery owner, teary-eyed, knelt beside them and offered a stainless steel bowl of water. The dog drank, and for the first time, in what may have been weeks, it wagged its tail. Then a young boy in the crowd asked, "Is the Pope taking him home?" The Pope looked up. "Something like that," he said gently. He rose slowly, nodding to the crowd, then whispered to his aide, "Let the veterinary unit know. We'll take him." Then he turned back to the dog and said one last thing. "Even the smallest among us has a name." And though he didn't declare it aloud then, he would later tell the world he had named the dog Leo, not after himself, but as a reminder of strength born in silence. The Vatican veterinary van pulled up quietly. The street had mostly cleared, though a few stunned bystanders remained. Still wrapped in the soft gray blanket, the dog was gently lifted into the vehicle. Pope Leo walked beside him, silent, his hand resting lightly on the edge of the carrier. The dog didn't resist. He didn't flinch. He simply looked at the Pope, those tired, searching eyes calm for the first time in days. At the Vatican clinic, a small team was already waiting. The lead vet, Dr. Cecilia Moretti, bowed slightly before guiding the carrier inside. The Pope declined a chair and stood beside the exam table as they cleaned wounds, removed ticks, and connected fluids. "He's malnourished, but stable," she said gently. "There's hope." Pope Leo gave a quiet nod. "Then we begin there." Before leaving the clinic that evening, he placed a note beside the kennel. "Leo. Seen, loved, restored." The dog was named Leo not for vanity, but as a tribute to endurance and gentleness. He became a quiet presence in the apostolic palace. In the mornings, he sat beside the Pope in the courtyard during readings. In the evenings, he curled near the chapel door, his head resting on the marble tile during prayer. Wherever the Pope went, Leo followed, calm, unbothered, observant. Staff who had once whispered awkwardly now greeted the dog with warmth. Aides began carrying treats. The gardener laid out a small wool mat near the basilica wall where Leo often napped beneath the sun. Children who visited the Vatican drew pictures of him. Some even called him the Silent Saint. When Pope Leo heard that, he smiled. He has no sermons, no words, only presence. That's enough. Not everyone was pleased. A few murmured behind closed doors. Some questioned the optics. Others worried the church was becoming too sentimental. The Pope listened, and then replied, "If this creature, once ignored and starving, can teach a child to smile again, he belongs beside me." He had a silver medallion made, inscribed with 3 words in Latin, Misericordia, Fides, Vita, mercy, faith, life. He clipped it gently to Leo's collar. One afternoon, the Pope took Leo to a pediatric cancer wing in Trastevere. A little girl who hadn't spoken in days reached out as Leo passed. He paused, then placed his head gently in her lap. Her mother began to cry. "She hasn't touched anything for 3 days." The girl whispered something inaudible, then kissed the top of Leo's head. Pope Leo stood quietly nearby, hands folded. Later that night, he wrote in his journal, "This dog has no theology, but his silence heals more than scripture." As weeks passed, Leo gained weight. His limp faded, his fur thickened. He didn't run, he didn't bark, but he followed the Pope faithfully. During private meetings with grieving widows or frightened soldiers' families, Leo would rest near their chairs. When emotions overwhelmed, he would rise, quietly, and place his head on their knees. One guest, wiping tears, whispered, "He understands." The Pope, watching from across the room, replied, "He listens better than most of us." One breezy evening after a long walk through the Vatican gardens, Pope Leo sat on a wooden bench beneath an olive tree. Leo climbed onto the stone step beside him and curled up, resting his head against the Pope's worn shoe. The Pope looked out across the lawn. Birds chirped. The air smelled of lavender. He ran his hand down Leo's back and spoke gently, not to be heard by anyone. "You were always worthy, even when no one saw it." Leo's tail gave a soft thump. A few aides watched from a distance, quiet and reverent. No camera crews, no press. Just a man and a dog under fading light. No miracles, no speeches, just grace in its simplest form. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.